Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. In this video I could pretend to be like super happy right now, but I just broke my fairy lights. Yeah, it's literally broken, as in that fairy light ends there, and yeah, it's okay, we're thriving. Anyway, that's not why I'm here. That's absolutely not why I'm here. I'm here to do my worst books of 2022. Is it late? Yes, but I still want to talk about it. I have had quite a few duds in 2022, but I count them, I class them on different levels. Like, there are duds that I'm like, this book is terrible. Like, this is just a bad book. And then there are duds where I'm like, maybe it's me, maybe me and the book didn't go well. I've got 10 books to talk to you about, which kind of sucks. But to be honest, I feel like I was pushing the 10. I could have easily come up with less. I didn't have to talk about all 10 here today. So to read 180 books and only 10 are like really bad, I'm not mad at that. To me, that's pretty alright stats. You will excuse me if I have a drink, right? This is a vodka cranberry, and I do feel like it's necessary. I've had one already, so if you can tell, that's the reason why. Book number 10 is Clown in a Cornfield. Now, what do I have to say about Clown in a Cornfield? If you don't know, this book is basically about this like small American town, and there used to be a company or something where their mascot was a clown. On top of that, they also have like lots of corn mazes in this town. That's the history of the town. And then there's a bunch of teens, and long story short, some people use the mascot of the clown and start killing people. So there's killer clowns. That is the synopsis of the book, and it was just terrible. It was actually just terrible. Like, the justification for what was happening, I just felt was so unbelievable. Like, it literally makes zero sense to me. Like, it feels like it's not even fathomable. I couldn't suspend my disbelief enough for the stretch of a stretch that this story was. Like, it was just unbelievable for me anyway. I've read many unbelievable books. I don't know why this one was just, it crossed the line, but it crossed the line. I was like, this is just terrible. Number 2, it had clowns in it, and I actually wasn't scared. Like, I wasn't scared by the clowns, which I used to be afraid of clowns. I've come a long way since that, but to read a book about clowns, I was intimidated. I was like, is this going to bring back the fear? Guess what? It didn't, because it wasn't a great book. And also, I also felt like the teenagers, they felt like a caricature. Like, it felt like, think of every single like American book representation of teens that you can think of. That's what it felt like. It was very much caricature. Like, we are the jocks, we are the popular kids, we are the this, we are the that. Like, and I just felt like they didn't feel real. They very much felt like characters. It was just unbelievable. I never really got into it. I didn't really connect to anyone. They all could have died. I said kill them all which is never a good sign. So yeah, the reason why it's number 10 is because, like, I can accept why other people enjoy this, because I had a good time reading this. Like, even though I kind of was like, this is a bad book, well, for me, like, it was like, this is a bad book for me. It wasn't, this is a bad book. Does that make sense? I don't know if that makes sense. Like, other people love this book, which is fine. Like, no shame. Happy for you. But for me, it weren't good. Book number 9 is not my type. And this, I want to say, is just a bad book, but I've still put it at number 9 because I wasn't as offended. Not my type is a book about this woman who, she's in a wheelchair, so she's got some sort of disability. I'm not exactly sure. I can't remember what disability she has, but she's in a wheelchair, and she has been for quite a while, but she's also an advocate for, like, not only safe sex, sexual freedom, liberation, and just because she's disabled doesn't mean that she shouldn't be having a fulfilled sexual life. And she's all about sex education and disabilities. So she agrees to, like, partner up with this sex ed kind of guy to, like, teach people how to safely do things like BDSM when you might have a disability. Okay, so having those conversations. So that, for the premise, love it. Ooh. For the premise, love it. The execution was trash. I'm really sorry. To me, the execution was trash. I felt like the writing was terrible. I felt like it wasn't believable. It was just like very much wham bam, thank you ma'am. Was there really any connection between these two characters? No. Again, very much felt like characters to me. Didn't feel real, didn't feel believable. I just feel like it was, to me, I feel like it was the writing. I felt like it was bad writing. Bad writing for me is different to other people. Like, I'm not asking for flowery writing, but it just wasn't good writing. I rated it 2 stars at the time, which actually isn't that bad, which is why it's like number 9. But I think disappointment was also very high for this book. I also wrote a review at the time, which I'm so grateful for now because I can read it back to you. And I think it kind of explains my feelings. I said, I don't know why this month was so disappointing. Not actually relevant to this conversation, but anyway. I don't know why this month was so disappointing. I was excited to read this book for the disability rep, but it just weren't great as an actual story. I think it was good showing the main character in a romantic light and the logistics of being in relationships whilst being disabled. Despite this, the story and writing was rubbish. It's like it went from educational to sexy with no content. Basically, like, there was no proper story. There was no falling in love. There was none of that. There was none of that actual romance kind of plotline. It didn't exactly work for me. So I was really disappointed because, as I said, I think I picked it up specifically because I heard about the disability rib and I was like, absolutely love it. But it just didn't pay off for me, which is kind of sad. Book number 8 is Love Sold Separately. This, I wish I could even remember the full plot line for you guys, but I can't. What I remember was that I think it's something to do with a woman who has an audition, maybe, for like a TV cook, I want to say, or TV personality, maybe TV telemarketing, and someone dies. And it's a mix of a love story and also a mystery. And it felt like it didn't do either of them well. Do you know what I mean? It felt like you tried to do 2 things and you failed at both. Like, it didn't quite get where it wanted to get. It didn't quite go where it wanted to go, and that is why it was so disappointing. You know, and I think this year I really leaned into mysteries. I really like reading mysteries this year. It's kind of become my personality, right? Which is absolutely fine. In fact, I love it. So for me, in my infancy of my mystery reading in life, I'm still a bit like, this was just bad. Like, as I said, I don't know what else to say, because I feel like I'm in danger of repeating myself, but neither of those I felt like were done very well. And it's not just because I feel like, oh, if it's a mystery, it has to be solely mystery, or if it's a romance, it has to be solely romance. Like, think of the Matchmaker mystery series. I really like that. That is very romance heavy and that is very mystery heavy. And I feel like that balance is done very well. And if you think of lots of other mysteries that have a strong romance subplot, I feel like they balance that a lot better than they did in this book. I also think I wrote a review for this one. So let me pull it up. Again, I gave it 2 stars. And this is what I said. I said, this book was confused. When I was looking at reviews, I saw a lot of people saying that it wasn't what they expected. And I agree. Both the name of the book and the cover give romance vibes, but the book is mainly a mystery. This confusion between mystery and romance continued in the plot. The romance was forgotten until the end, where the mystery was rushed for a final chapter that went through the entire romance plot. It needed to figure out the pacing and what genre this wanted to be to have the focus. Okay, I feel like, I don't know, my reviews aren't always that legible because I'm kind of just brain to fingers to Goodreads to publish. Otherwise I won't write a review. Basically, the mystery, it was romance at the beginning, then something happens which sparks off the mystery, and then it's very mystery heavy, and then right towards the end they like wrap it up, and it's so rushed and so like over and done with, and you're like, what the hell? All of this mysteryness, and then for that to be the ending of the mystery is terrible. And then we have like an extra final chapter where it's all about the romance that was completely forgotten for the rest of the book and harks back to the beginning. It was confused. It didn't know what it wanted to be. And so that's what I was trying to say. Like, was this a romance book with a mystery subplot? Or was this a mystery book with a romance subplot? I don't think it knew either. And that was its problem. Book number 7 is bad. It is bad. It is bad. But it's also kind of funny bad. It's also kind of, we can laugh about it. Okay? Because you're just like, girl, you thought this was cute? but it won't. So for more depth about the plot, it's basically about these two neighbours who are feuding because one adopts a cat and the other neighbour already had a dog, and then they're both making up noise and then they both run away. That is the plot of this book. And that is the problem. This feud, it was unnecessary. It was really unnecessary. And I know it's a novella, so it's like, how much can you do in that time in order to establish an enemies to lovers? But it wasn't an enemies to lovers. It actually wasn't. It was actually just, it felt so forced. It felt like such, it felt like the author wanted to make this an enemies to lovers trope, but didn't have any actual reason for them to be enemies. And so she was just like, oh yeah. And so all of the arguments and the tension between them felt contrived. It felt unnecessary. It felt performative, right? It was, I don't know why I use such big words there, but that is how it felt for me anyway. And it was just bad. It was just bad, but it was kind of fun bad. I don't know what to say. One thing I also want to point out from my review, right, which just makes me crease because it reminds me of it, was that I was like, also, I don't like how the main character just knocked on her neighbour's door with her knickers on, right? I said, I'm sorry, that's just unsafe. And it was. Like, I don't care how much noise your neighbour is keeping up in the middle of the night. I don't care how tired you are. As a female, going to knock on someone's door in like a little tank top and knickers. It's just not safe, babe. It's just not safe. Now, to be honest, I say it as a woman, right? But as anybody, is it safe to go in? Like, let's just be inclusive, right? As anybody, is it safe? Is it safe to knock on someone's door in your undertrousers? In your underpants? In your knicker and your pants? It's giving, I don't know what it's giving, but it's giving strange danger. Also, are you opening your door to someone in their underpants? No, you're thinking, who's this crazy person? Who was this crazy person at my doorstep? Absolutely not. Slam door. Anyway, I know that sounds really petty as a reason to say a book was bad, but a book was bad. You can't add that and not add that explanation, like not add anybody going, are you actually dumb? Are you actually crazy? And expect it to be a believable book. It doesn't work that way. I'm sorry. But let's just move on. This book was one of my worst books of the year, but it wasn't actually a bad book. It was me. This was, you know how it's like, it's not you, it's me? This is my relationship with this book. It's Diabolium 1. Now, Die is basically a Dungeons and Dragons inspired comic graphic novel. I didn't understand it. I didn't get it. I don't play Dungeons and Dragons. It was evident. It's absolutely evident that I don't play Dungeons and Dragons because what the hell was going on in this book? Like, I was reading it. I was with my eyes. I was there, but I wasn't there. It felt like a bit of a trip. It felt a bit like, what is going on? Like, where is the disconnect? I don't quite understand. And it was all about like die and different dies, as in like dice, and some were like 6 shaped die and some were 7 shaped die and 20 shaped die, but they each had a different number die, and I just didn't understand. But I was like, aren't you all playing the same game? Why do you all need a different number die? And how does that relate to this book that I'm reading? I was very confused. I was very, very confused. So this was one of the worst books that I read, but it's not a bad book at all. It's not a bad book at all. I would even recommend it. I would recommend it to other people. Those people, it's just not me. It was just, whoa, it was confusing. I know where my limitations are. Well, I didn't at the time. Now I know my limitations, and this book is my limitation. Book number 5 makes me sad. Book number 5 makes me sad because I feel like it was one of my most highly anticipated books of 2022. Like, I think it was before I had a channel, so you guys don't really know this, and I don't really speak about it because it actually was upsetting. It actually really deeply upset me to my core, and I had so many strong feelings about this book. It was a strong feeling drawer. So in that way, I guess it was a good book. So this book is called Grey Hair Don't Care. I don't think I've even said that. It's Grey Hair Don't Care. And the premise of this is that it's an older woman And it's a third chance romance. So she used to be friends with this guy at school, and I think they had a fling, and then whatever happened, and then they run into each other like years and years later. They have a one night stand, and then like a year later after the one night stand, here they are again. When I tell you, this man was trash. The man was actually trash. He was actually really, really trash. And the thing is, he wasn't supposed to be. Like, he was supposed to be not a perfect man, but the author did so well at not a perfect man. She actually made me dislike him with a serious passion. I was like, he's trash. And this is a problem, especially with a third chance romance. Like, you really have to do a lot to convince me that he's worth your time. Like, because why are we back here? Like, sis, let him go. Sis, let him go. You can do so much better. At this point, it's time. Like, you've been hooked on this same dude all these years. Let him go. You deserve better. So also, I love the main character, the woman, which maybe is where the writing was good, because I loved the main character. So she is in the beauty field, and so at some point she decides to embrace her hair going grey, and she grows old gracefully, and also grows grey gracefully. Sorry, there was a lot of G's there, and it was getting tongue twistery moment. That representation of like older people falling in love is why I read this book, because this is part of the series called like the second chance romance or something like that. I can't remember the name of the series, but something like that. And that whole premise of the series I loved. Like, this was the first book where it was about an older woman and an older man as well falling in love again. Like, just because we're not 20 something or even 30 something or even 40 something doesn't mean we don't deserve love. Second book, I think, is about a single mother or a widow. That is the sort of representation that I crave in my romances at this point in my life. Like, I've read enough about college aged kids. I say as if I'm not a university aged child myself, but you know, I crave that diversity. So I was really looking forward to this book. It really disappointed me in that way, and I felt that I couldn't actually enjoy it because I was spent so much time hating on the man. I felt like her best friend. I felt like her best friend who over all of the years has just heard how much badness is done to her, and I'm like, sis, why are we still here? You've been telling me about this man for years. For years I've had to hear about this man. You know, when you actually start to dislike the man, even though you don't actually really know him, and you're thinking, this is dangerous. Like, I actually dislike you so much and I don't even really know you. When your friend's telling you about their life, that's how it felt. So if anything, maybe it was a good book, but I don't think the author meant that. I think the author just meant to be like, oh, he's flawed. He was too flawed. He was too flawed. Like, level up. Level up, sis. You deserve higher than him. Here's what I previously wrote. I said the main love interest grated on me. I tried to be like, if you love him, I love him, right? But he was insufferable. In my opinion, he came across like a rich, entitled white man. The views he held on aging women was borderline misogynistic. Thank goodness for the main woman, because I wanted to see her succeed. I say borderline. Like, he goes on this whole spiel about, grey hair, oh gosh, you know, you're aging, you're this, you're that, you're less valuable, yada, 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 yada. Nah, man. Talking about he only dates women younger than him by however many years. All of that stuff. And then there's this whole, oh my goodness, it's all starting to... It's all coming back, it's coming back to me now. Listen... Moving on, because I could be here all day. I'm going to switch on my order on the fly. I'm going to switch on my order and say that the next one is Jive. Jive, I don't really remember that much about. It was just bad. I'm going to quickly just breeze through this. This is basically about a guy, because I spoke about this in my, like, if you watched my recent video where I did my makeup whilst I did a tag, I spoke about Jive there. Basically, it's about a guy. There was a sort of apocalypse, or not apocalypse, but like some sort of something. Life changed while this guy was in prison. He came out of prison. He took advantage of how life has changed to say he was like a prophet or something. And then now he's like this super big person, but he's really just a con man. It was bad. It was terrible. It was just bad and terrible. There's really not much else to say. It was just bad and terrible. Like, it doesn't even... The words, it doesn't even need words to tell you it was just bad and terrible. Just skip it. Just don't read from this author. Don't read this book. That's how I feel. It was just bad. It was just like a waste of time. Wow. That was harsh, but I said what I said. Next up, we have Talking with Serial Killers. I really dislike this book. I really dislike Talking with Serial Killers. So this is basically some leading criminologist in the UK. I don't know why I'm doing air quotes, but it's because he self-proclaims that he's a leading criminologist. And I do believe he is a leading criminologist, but I can put air quotes if I want to put air quotes, because your book annoyed me, sir. Your book annoyed me, sir. So, what am I saying? I feel like I shouldn't have had these drinks, because now I'm getting salty. Now I'm getting spicy. As I was saying, Talking with Serial Killers, yeah, I really didn't like it. Oh, it's actually not just Talking with Serial Killers, it's Sleeping with Psychopaths. So I read this for my reading serial killers vlog, because I wanted to read this book and I thought it was a good non-fiction pairing, because it was like sleeping with serial killers and it was like, you know, serial killer romances. Yeah, you understand. But this was just so bad, because this main criminologist guy, he was so goddamn opinionated. He just kept inserting his opinion on these women, and I was a bit like, this isn't what I came here for. I came here more for like a psychological examining of groupies, like people who intentionally write to serial killers, like once they're already caught, or even just like the psychological manipulations of serial killers, like getting into a relationship with a serial killer, how often they might be this, and then like, do you know what I mean? That's what I was more looking for, like the manipulation of what it's like to be in a relationship with a serial killer, how it may seem all glitz and glam, how they're often manipulative. That's what I wanted to deep dive into. Instead, this book was like, okay, here's a long list of serial killers. Oh, and by the way, did you know that I spoke to this serial killer and I spoke to this serial killer? Because I'm such a big important man. I spoke to them. I am in this industry. But here you are. Here's the list. If you want to know more, go check out my other book. But here's this long list of serial killers. Oh, and this serial killer had a wife. Oh, yeah, but that wife, she made her money, didn't she? He might have been a serial killer, but I guess she profited. That's how it felt. It felt very much judgy. Very much judgy. Okay? And I was literally like, but who are you to be judging these women? Get your coin, sis. Yeah? If you had a relationship with a serial killer, listen, do what you need to do. Do what you need to do to survive. If you want to write a book and say, guess what, I worked with a serial killer, do it. Do it. Why not? Why not? Everybody needs to thrive in life. And I just felt like there was a lot of women shaming going on, rather than a serial killer shame. That's actually, there we go. I feel like I've finally come to a on the head of what I think is the problem with this book. It very much felt like a shaming the women who were dating the serial killers, rather than shaming the serial killers and sympathetic for the women who had to date them. I was expecting them to be like, oh, like these serial killers, like, you know, the way they manipulate you, they isolate you your whole life, they spent all their money on this man and and they were treated like trash, and then the physical abuse and the mental abuse, that's what. And like these serial killers, like you think they're just serial killers and like killing people, but not only that, they're having a really negative impact on the people who are in their lives that they don't actually have as traditional victims. We don't think of them as their victims because they didn't kill them, but they're still a victim of this serial killer. Instead, I got, so there was this serial killer, but let's not look at them. Let's not look at all of the bad things they did. Let's look at their women. Now, to be honest, it wasn't that bad. I am very much exaggerating, but that's how I felt when reading it. Book number 2 is Break Your Glass Slippers, but this is a stand-in for this whole trash series. It's poetry, but to me, is it really? People always say like Instagram poetry, and I think it's kind of like almost a shade. Some. I don't know, it's just not my kind of poetry that I want. I seek a different kind of poetry. So when I'm seeing a lot of Instagram poetry, I do kind of think, it's just not for me. This felt like Instagram poetry in the worst ways when people say Instagram poetry, right? It felt very much like, I can't even think of an example. Leave him, says my big sister. Don't let anybody determine your self-worth. Like, I didn't come for a self-help book. That's actually not why I came. But maybe that was my fault. Maybe I picked up this book and it wasn't for me. Maybe that's my fault, because poetry is subjective. These are very, very popular poetry books, but I absolutely hate them. They were trash. To me, in my opinion. No shade. The thing is, it's one of them books that I'm like, I actually thought this was actually terrible. I thought this was really bad. But at the same time, I acknowledge that that's personal preference. That's just my personal preference of what poetry I like. I'm a very specific poetry lover. Like, I pick up a lot of poetry. I don't pick up a lot of poetry because a lot of poetry I don't like. I don't. And I know that about myself. So for me, I'm like, this book was trash, in my personal opinion. So if someone was to come to me and say, I absolutely love this book, I'm like, good for you. And not even in a shady way, like, absolutely great for you. I'm happy you found someone that you love. For me, trash. Absolutely horrible. Absolutely hated it. Was a waste of my time. The only reason why I read them was because I had them on NetGalley and I didn't want to just like not review them. So I felt forced to read them. And I think I read 2 of them and they're both terrible. One was better than the other because they had a sister relationship in it, and I have a sister, and that made me happy-ish. So that one's why that got 2 stars. The other one got 1 star. Now, for the West, the West of the West of the West of the West of the West, 2022. If you've been around, you've probably heard it. You've probably heard it. Woo! It is. You've been publicly shamed. Sorry, it went from my brain. It's You've been publicly shamed. I hated this book. I hated it. I hated it. This was a bad book in my opinion. This is a bad book in my opinion. I actually feel like doing a reading 1-star reviews of books that I hated. Like, I want vindication for why I hated it. Not like, oh, reading 5-star reviews of books I hated, because fair enough, like, you enjoyed it, I didn't, you know. But reading 1-star reviews of books I hated, yeah, because I feel like I want to deep dive into why I hate this book so much. It was goddamn terrible. This to me, okay, so basically, if this is, I don't know if I said, this is meant to be a deep dive on like cancel culture. It was just one cis white man's ramblings and worries on being cancelled. It was terrible. It was truly awfully terrible. Like, it just kept coming back to him going, but what if I get cancelled? What if I get cancelled? And his judgments, similar to talking with serial killers, like, his judgments was coming through so strongly. Like, he'll be retelling a situation and he'll be like, oh yeah, he's a neo-Nazi, and the judgment wasn't really there. Like, I didn't really hear the levels of judgment that personally for me would be there if we were talking about neo-Nazism. Neo-Nazis. But I'm just saying, if we're talking about neo-Nazis with me, you're gonna hear shade, you're gonna hear judgment. Yeah, I'm just gonna say it. Put my hands up. That, for me, that's a line. And I'm a judge. Okay? I feel like I try not to be judgmental. I am very judgmental, but I try not to be. But that's a line where I feel like I can judge. You're a neo-Nazi? I feel like I can judge. Right? He didn't really have that judgment. Fair. Because I actually appreciate that. Fair. But then it comes down to a woman calling out misogyny in her workplace, and he's like, oh, absolutely not. She deserved to be cancelled. She deserved her cancelling. Look, she tried to shame someone. She tried to shame them. She tried to shame them for making her feel uncomfortable in her workplace. The men for making sexual remarks in the workplace. And she thought that was terrible. Ugh, no wonder she was cancelled. Are you dumb? Are you dumb? These men are inappropriately making sexual remarks in a workplace. She felt uncomfortable. She called it out. And yet somehow the internet managed to twist it round and shame her. And he's like, yeah, as it should be. What? Like, make it make sense. Make it make sense. 2 + 2. Is it equaling 4? I somehow don't think it is. And that's why I hate this book so much. And so he'll be judging this woman like, yeah, like, to be honest, she deserved to get cancelled, honestly. Like, I don't know what she was thinking. And then he'll be like, but then again, there's me, and what if I get cancelled? I better go to a group. And see what they say, see if they can help me in feelings about being cancelled. And then it goes to a neo-Nazi, and he's like, yeah, well, he was a neo-Nazi, but, you know, at least he was telling his truth. Oh, but what if I get cancelled? Let me go speak to someone. Let me go speak to him. See if he can tell me what to do. See if he can reassure me. See if I can learn what to do if I ever get cancelled. It put me off him. But yeah, that was my worst book of 2022. Cheers. With this tiny bit. Let me tell you something, guys. I would have finished this already, but I was waiting for the end of this video. Cheers again. And those were the worst books of the year. They were bad. Some of them were bad. Some of them were my personal opinion. Some of them just didn't hit where I wanted it to hit. But it's my opinion, and yeah, So, no shade to anyone. No shade to the authors. No shade to the people who love these books. It's literally, it's me. I hope you enjoyed this video because I do think that this second drink kind of did tip me over the edge of slightly tipsy, perhaps. So I think it's probably time for me to go. Anyway, I'll see you guys soon. I think soon. For my best books of the year, which hopefully will go a bit better than this. Hopefully it's more joy, less shade. And I'll see you then. Bye, guys.